My name is Rachel Chilius, and I teach ninth grade English at a large public school in what's called an urban suburb of New Jersey. And we have a really diverse population of students. And last year our district brought The Race to Nowhere to our high school, and they screened it for an audience of teachers and parents, and no students, unfortunately. And I remember turning to a colleague in the middle of the movie and saying, I wish we could show this to the kids. I know they would have so much to say about what's going on in this film. And so the next morning I went to school, and in lieu of being able to show it to them, I told my students about the film and things I had seen in it, and some of the students' stories and their parents' thoughts. And I could see the kids all around the classroom nodding in recognition and turning to each other and saying, oh yeah, that's so true. And you know, they really had a connection with it. And after I had spoken for a while, I said, how many of you feel like you're on this metaphorical treadmill racing towards something that is off in the distance, and you're feeling winded and not sure what you're doing? Raise your hand. And the very first hand that went up in my classroom was probably my highest achieving student in the room, a kid who has had straight A's since he entered school, who comes from a very high achieving family, who could take a computer apart, put it back together again. Actually, he built a computer one summer for fun, and seemed to really thrive on all the academic rigor in our school. And whenever a kid had a question, he was the first kid they would turn to, because they just assumed he was an encyclopedia, and he almost always did have the answer. Anyway, his hand went up first, and I was sure that he was going to say, well, of course we need to do hours of homework every night, and how else are you going to get educated? But it's not what he said. I was stunned when he physically sort of drooped and said, Mrs. Chilius, I am so tired. I have been in an academic summer camp every year since I was 4 years old. He said, I take classes outside of my academic school day all year round. He speaks at least 2 languages, maybe more. He does clubs and plays an instrument and goes to a cultural school to study about his heritage, aces every test. And he was so disgusted by it all. And he said, recently my parents offered me $500 to memorize 750 SAT vocabulary words. And the whole class said, did you do it? And he said, of course I did it, and I got the $500. And he said, but I'm exhausted, and I just don't want to do it anymore. And kids were nodding in agreement. I know what you mean, I know what you mean. But coming from this young man who I assumed was feeling satisfied with what he does and what he accomplishes, and to hear him say that it's not what he wants, but he wants to please his parents, and of course he wants to, he knows he's smart and he wants to do well and he wants to go to a good school, but what he has to do to get there is what he doesn't want to do. And yet he finds himself in that position. And after that, other kids chimed in with their stories and their feelings, and I'm still hoping to show the film to my current freshmen. I think it's a conversation that has to go on, and we have to include their voices, because we're sitting there doling out the work, or not, but they're the ones that have to deal with it. And just one other thing, I shared with my students that sometimes I give them homework even when I don't really want to, because parents equate homework with rigor. And if they're not coming home with a bag full of work from my class, maybe I'm not doing what I should be doing to prepare them. So honestly, I have my students for 90 minutes a day. I feel I can get as much done during the day as I need to, but then feel guilty or feel under pressure to assign even more, because I don't want their parents to feel that they're not being prepared. And in English, which I teach, the critical conversations and discussions that we have in class, which ask them to make connections between the books they read and their lives and culture, I think are so much more viable than worksheets and quizzes and tests on who wrote Romeo and Juliet and what year, and what color robe does Mrs. Capulet wear in the movie. Who cares? And my students seem to really second that emotion of enough is enough. So thank you for letting me share, and keep going. This is such a worthwhile fight. And just by the way, I'm not in this for the contest. I'll leave that to the students. But I did want to have my voice heard in this conversation. So thank you for listening.